Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever or wherever you are listening to this from. Welcome to NoPIP, the No Preconceived Ideas Podcast. For this time round, NoPIP on NPI. Hi, and welcome everybody to the podcast. Obviously, it's brand new, so to give you an idea of what's going on, we're just going to sort of introduce ourselves and basically what this podcast is all about. My name's Ross.
And I'm Stuart. So, right, we've introduced ourselves, so do you want to talk about NPI and our history of NPI?
Sure. Right. Let's all go back into the midst of time. The year is 1995. This is where the concept of no preconceived ideas actually originated from. I basically just wanted to create a band where I could just do whatever I wanted under the umbrella of
The umbrella of no preconceived ideas. The concept of the band was to be a band free of genres, a band free to express itself through whatever musical genres it pleased, be it, heavy metal for one thing, and another project could be, a more dancey, house beat type thing, if you so desired.
Yeah.
Does that sound about accurate?
Yeah, that was basically the whole point, because it's sort of my taste in music is incredibly varied. I can run the gamut from sort of like in a bit of Beethoven to The Prodigy, Moby, Aphex Twin, all the way up to Dimmu Borgir, Hecate and Throne, Cradle of Filth, and obviously your classic metal bands like Metallica and things like that.
Right.
So,
can you fill us in for people who are less familiar with those two bands you said? What kind of music do they make? I'm assuming it's some kind of metal.
Dimmu Borgir and Hecate and Throne are actually in the realms of black metal.
Okay, fair enough.
Which is one of the more extreme forms of metal. People may have heard of bands possibly like Cannibal Corpse. They're sort of death metal, so they're all the growly stuff, whereas the black metal, their vocals can run the gamut from your growly to sort of really high-pitched screeching. It's basically the idea that they are kind of like the voices of the dead.
Are Cradle of Filth actually considered a black metal band?
They were once upon a time. When they very first started, but I think really nowadays they're actually probably more traditional new wave of British heavy metal. But not necessarily in Danny Filth's vocals, but definitely the musicality of it is not terribly far removed from Iron Maiden. They're sort of probably a bit more traditional metal than black metal, I would say.
I mean, Danny Filth's vocals certainly with the stuff I'm familiar with the Medium album. I think that's probably one of their more famous albums. I don't know if they have a more famous album than that now. The way you describe black metal vocals, that's pretty much what Danny Filth sounds like on that album.
He still sort of goes that way, but I think he's getting on a bit, and he probably can't sort of get the as high as he used to be able to, which is probably why they're probably sounding a bit more sort of traditional heavy metal than they were ever before, really. But that's not to say he sounds like Bruce Dickinson, of course. He's still nowhere near him.
Well, but, Iron Maiden are at a very accessible end of metal, which is very surprising when you look at all the artwork and stuff. In the 80s, the idea of Iron Maiden was very exciting to me as a kid. I used to see the T-shirts and I was scared of them. Like when you'd see that classic, that poster for Halloween 3 where it had the hockey mask with the knives in it and the blood coming out. It was like, oh my God. I was like 5 or 6. That movie must be so violent. Oh, Jesus, look, it's a mask being stabbed in the face and there's blood coming out. And then I go to the market and I'd see these T-shirts. Oh God, the guy's ripping apart his own head. This must be the most violent music ever made. Oh Jesus. And then you actually hear it and it's really fun. But yeah, it's certainly not what I was expecting.
Yeah, well, we're talking about Iron Maiden in particular, but the imagery does still fit the music, though.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
I mean, that's totally the thing.
Well, isn't there like songs? Aren't some of the songs like about genocides and shit? I'm sure one of their more famous ones about some kind of genocide.
Yeah, probably. I must admit, I wouldn't say that I'm a particular fan of Iron Maiden because I pretty much of the Blaze Bayley era, and this is an era of Iron Maiden that a lot of Iron Maiden fans just like to pretend never actually happened. And I'm like, yeah, that's my stuff right there.
Hey, he was pretty good. They got on top of the pops and were excellent on top of the pops with Blaze Bayley. So, you know.
Yeah, but I'm sure most Iron Maiden fans are still shaking their heads as we speak at this.
Yeah, well, they can fuck off.
Well, that is the beauty. That was the beauty of music, and also of No Preconceived Ideas. Because if you didn't like this song, you might like the next one. That's the whole point.
So, I mean, we've heard you talk about your metal influences there. We should add that I was nowhere near No Preconceived Ideas in 1995. I was living in Kent. Ross was living in Essex. I had no idea who Ross was and hadn't met him at this point till a good years and years later I met Ross.
I shall come on to this because I've been consulting my notes. I've actually been doing some research. Can you believe? All professional-like.
Yes.
Yes. No Preconceived Ideas has actually gone through quite a number of lineup changes. In 1995, it was actually just me, one other guy, whose name is written down, but who cares about him anymore? But then it sort of like grew, and there's been other people here and there. But we come on to Stuart. This, as we're recording, which is February 2018, when we get to June of 2018, that will actually be your decade anniversary of being in NPI.
Ah, sweet. Am I one of the longest running members?
You are. In fact, as of this moment in time, yes, actually, even now, you are. Yes.
Excellent. I win.
Yes. Unfortunately, we have not played live. There's only ever been one live gig of MPI, which was in 2002. Or was it not? No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. It was June 2002.
Yeah, that's a bit of a pisser that I never got to play live. We were figuring out ways to do this. We had laptops. I brought a groove box, which is like a drum machine, but it also has other instruments in it. They're sample based. They're on ROMs, so you can't load your own samples into them. But yeah, you get a drum machine and tons of other instruments. They're very, very good. So yeah, we were looking into that. We were looking at MIDI setups, and we were trying to figure out how to get the guitar and the computer to play nice together. So yeah, we were experimenting with drum loops and stuff, and I was also experimenting with a way that we could have loops for certain parts of the song, and if we wanted to extend a section, like a couple of bars or so, I could just leave that loop going, and then when we were going on to the next part, I could just press a button for the next loop in the song. And
it's just really sort of unfortunate, really, that just as we sort of were getting to that point, and we was looking into sort of maybe we could do live, that real life actually kind of gets in the way. We've actually, both of us have moved away from where we used to be, so actually sort of meeting up isn't as easy as it was before. I went and had a child. Well, not me personally, my partner did, but I was obviously responsible. So all of that is sort of like takes away the time. Which basically kind of brings us really as to why we're actually doing a podcast. So Stuart, I mean, it was your idea to actually want to do the podcast. So what was your thinking sort of behind it? What was your actual intentions for us to do this?
Well, it was to get the creative muscles moving for both of us. So when we were doing the music together, that was a good creative outlet for the both of us. I enjoyed creating with Ross. So, yeah, I thought it would be interesting to do something that was more time-friendly. With band and stuff. There's setting things up. It's a huge time commitment that isn't that feasible with families and stuff. Ross, I'm sure, won't be too mad for me saying this, but he's not hugely technically minded when it comes to music technology. So
Understatement of the year.
So yes, we weren't going to be sending MIDI patterns back and forth, or tracker modules for him to play with. So I thought us getting together regularly to do a podcast would be a way for us to do something creative together that was relatively easy for us to set up.
So the whole idea, as it was all those many years ago for the band, as is now for the podcast, is to be under the NPI banner. So we can basically talk about whatever particular topic that we would like. So we're not sort of just honed in on a particular subject or anything like that. It's whatever basically sort of takes our fancy. But the first thing that we do have on the cards, do you want to announce to everybody what it is that we're going to be talking about?
It's Disney movies. We're going to watch lots of the classic movies, probably all of them. And yeah, we're going to discuss how we found watching those movies as heterosexual men who are probably a bit too old for them, and kind of the wrong gender, sex, whatever you want to call it for them, and talk about the context of when the movie was made, the things that were happening around the movie, and other interesting discussions of those things. I mean, Walt Disney himself, there's a lot to talk about with him. Authors of several of the Disney stories, there's interesting things to say about them. So yeah, there's lots of meat and potatoes in those subjects, I think, so to speak.
Yeah, so when we actually finally get round to getting off our backsides and actually doing it, the first one that we'll actually be doing under the Disney would be, well, might as well start at the very, very beginning. It will be Snow White.
Yes. And again, there's loads of interesting things to discuss there. I mean, as well as the sort of like the change in animation styles, you've also got we can talk about the false narrative that's been presented in Hollywood because of Snow White, where they're like, oh, it was the first animated feature film ever made, which actually isn't true. There was a European woman who was really into shadow puppets and used to make short films with these shadow puppets, and she actually made a rather whimsical feature-length film with those shadow puppets. So yeah, it was beaten to the punch on another continent, but history's written by the winners.
Well, if it wasn't American, it never existed.
Exactly.
That's the basic gist of it.
Yes. And, powerful corporations are very fond of rewriting narratives. You see it everywhere. I mean, we're both fans of wrestling, and WWE rewrites its history constantly.
Well, sometimes I don't even want to remember what their storylines were from the previous week.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of...
No consistency kind of whatsoever with them. So it's not surprising how sort of like the ancient history kind of gets rewritten, and things that people sort of think happened didn't actually happen.
Well, indeed. I mean, with the week-to-week stuff, it's more... the people up top are being lazy and just going, well, it's wrestling, who cares? And that kind of attitude is going to just run people off your show if you say it's just a stupid TV show, who cares? Well, okay, if you don't think fans of your show should care, why should they care then? They will stop caring and go to somewhere else where someone does care that they're watching.
But the thing with WWE at the moment is the fact that they feel that they don't have any real competition, and that probably is actually true to an extent. Yes,
well, other than New Japan.
Well, you do have New Japan, but I think the general layperson probably has never even heard of that.
No.
They may possibly have heard of TNA or Impact or whatever the hell they're calling themselves this week. But the sort of, yeah, you ask like the Joe public, they probably would only know WWE, which is a shame, really, because I mean, you do need to sort of look elsewhere and to sort of, I mean, I haven't been watching as much as New Japan as what you have, but from what I've been hearing about it, and yes, it is something that I really should be watching more often, because it does seem to be. From what I see, it probably is actually the best wrestling company in the world, really.
I'd agree with that.
For the terms of the storyline, the actual wrestling, whereas WWE, they're probably actually embarrassed by the fact that they have wrestling. I think they'll probably rather just sort of cut that bit out and just sort of have the soap opera aspect of things, which is not really a great way to go. When you have a person who owns a wrestling company and basically bans the word wrestling, you know you've really got a massive problem on your hands.
Vince McMahon famously doesn't like wrestling. He doesn't want to have a wrestling company. He wants a media empire. He wants to be, Disney. That's why he's still got the film division, despite the fact it loses an absolute fortune. That's why he's relaunching the XFL, despite the fact that the XFL was a huge success last time around. Or it might not have been. I may be remembering the history wrong.
Oh, yes, it was incredibly successful. Yes. Well, let's face it. If it takes you somewhere, probably about 15 to 20 years, I don't know how long it is, but it's an awful long time to give it another go. That shows you just how much of a success it must have been in the first place.
Indeed. No one knows why Vince is trying this again. I don't know if he's a big football fan. I don't think he is. It's very strange. I mean, the first time round, the XFL was mostly a punch. Well, it had become a punchline to me before the relaunch, and now it's kind of even more of a punchline. There's a wonderful thing online. Hunter S. Thompson actually did a review of one of the XFL games because he was friends with Jesse Ventura, and Jesse Ventura was one of the commentators, announcers. I don't know. He was doing something on the XFL, and he asked Hunter S. Thompson to review one of the games when the XFL was nearing the end of its life, and it's a wonderful piece of writing. I recommend everyone seek that out. That's quite fun, but it certainly shows you Vince McMahon's determination to have a media empire that isn't wrestling. I could understand him trying to branch out into other things to be profitable, not having all the eggs in one basket, but the fact that he loses so much money with them, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, it's all a bit weird, but some people actually seem to be quite excited. Who knows? Maybe this time around, perhaps it'll have a bit more of a go. I mean, he's never ever going to be able to replace the NFL, which is what he's trying to basically do, and that's probably not a good thing. I mean, to sort of cast the analogy. There was a period of time where TNA basically was trying to go head to head with the WWE. And it became very, very apparent very, very quickly that this was not a thing that they should do. They moved their flagship program to Monday nights to go against Monday Night Raw. And the inevitable happened. It got absolutely hammered. And within a couple of months, they were back to their original slot. Or at least it was moved away from Mondays. Now they seem to be in this kind of sort of thing of where they basically kind of acknowledge, okay, we're not them, we're not going to be them, let's just concentrate on us. And it actually does seem to be a better product. I haven't actually seen it myself personally because, family things and all of that get in the way. Don't have much time to be able to watch as much wrestling as I would love to. But the few bits and pieces that I've seen here and there, it does actually seem to be a better product than what it was when it was trying to be the WWE. And that is basically what Vince needs to do with the XFL. It's like, no, we're not going to be the NFL. We're just going to be us. We're just going to do our thing. And hopefully people will enjoy that for what it is.
Well, he has tried to buy an NFL team before, but Mr. Burns is actually based, Mr. Burns from The Simpsons is actually based on a real-life billionaire that owns an NFL team. And he is an absolute pain in the arse for the NFL. He's always filing all kinds of irritating lawsuits and causing them headaches. So the NFL actually blocked Vince McMahon from buying a team because they're like, no, we've already got one crazy idiot who wastes our time and causes problems. We don't want two.
No, I can perfectly understand that, particularly if you then ever got those two idiots in the same room. That would probably not have been fun for anybody.
No, I mean, Vince McMahon was, before the Twin Tower attacks and things, Vince McMahon was on a commercial flight and the flight needed to divert somewhere. And this was going to delay Vince McMahon getting to somewhere where he wanted to be. He actually went right up to the cockpit door and was like banging on it and yelling at the pilot. That's the kind of person Vince McMahon is.
Yeah, because that's really going to work.
Well, that's the way he thinks. I mean, he's now got access to the president, which is quite scary.
Yes, well, the less said about that, the better, I think.
Yeah, I think, well, America's had bad presidents before, and it's survived them. So, I'm sure America can survive its president as of the 28th of February 2018. It'll hopefully have better candidates for people to vote for afterwards. I mean, the thing you have to remember is he ran as a publicity stunt. The man that we shall not name, of course, well, it's Voldemort. So Voldemort runs as a publicity stunt. He had no intention of actually being the president. And, he actually gets through on his initial run. He does better than expected on further runs. And just appealing to the lowest common denominator, he has lots of billionaires who have a vested interest in someone like him in the White House because he's quite easy to buy off. The NRA paid a whole bunch of money to him for him to unban assault rifles, and look at the situation that got us. So, that certainly helped him quite a lot, appealing to the lowest common denominator and, promises that he could never delivered on ever. It's like if if the Tories had two versions of the Tory party and they had, well, you could have Theresa May or you can have this one who promises a free hand job for everyone who wants one if he gets into power, and he'll make abortions completely illegal, and that kind of thing, which is obviously something that just can't be delivered on.
Well, yeah, because he's quite clever with the point scoring, because he comes up with things that will sort of grabs people's attentions, and I think, yeah, that's exactly what we want. He knows full well that's never going to happen in a million years, but there are going to be things where he can then blame it on someone else when it doesn't actually happen. It's sort of like saying, hey, I said that we was going to do this. We couldn't do this because the other guys, they're the bad guys. They're the ones who said that we shouldn't be allowed to do it. It's the judge's fault. They said that we couldn't do it for whatever stupid legal reasons. It's their fault. It's not me. I said I was going to do it. And then everybody goes, oh, yeah, it's right. It's not his fault. Poor guy. Well, it's like, yeah, right. It's infuriating.
We look on history, Obama's probably going to get some statues, and everyone's going to pretend that Trump never happened. He's going to be a dark period of history. Like in Germany, you can't depict Nazis in video games, even if they're the bad guys.
Wow, I didn't know it went as far as that. I know that they sort of illegal to even kind of like acknowledge or not, no, it's not illegal to acknowledge that the Nazis everything, but they've got such a sort of a hang up about it. It's sort of like, no, they sucked. We know that they sucked, sort of a thing.
Yeah, basically they after the Second World War, loads of places in the world were like, yeah, this should never happen again, ever, ever, ever. That's why you had the European Charter of Human Rights, the UN, the founding of the EU. Lots of these things were to prevent those sort of things ever happening again. And one of the other things that Germany did was like, yeah, you can't depict Nazis at all in any way, shape or form in your video games. Even if they're the bad guys and you're just shooting the Nazis for lols, you can't have that. People might think Nazis are cool somehow.
I could sort of have some sympathy with that, but at the same time, we're killing Nazis, so nah.
Well, I think it's a bit over the top with censorship with Germany, but there's worse things than censorship, and it's quite redundant in the age of the internet. Every so often there'll be a moral outrage on something where it's just a censorship issue. You look at the video nasties of the 1980s and how out of hand that whole thing got. There was one MP who said on record that these horror movies, these horror VHSs were capable of corrupting dogs. Family pets could be turned evil by these horror movies.
I have not heard of that one. That's brilliant.
Yep, he says it. It's on clip. He's saying all these things, that all this corruption it can cause to children and stuff, and how terrible it is. And then he says, and dogs, and I completely missed it. I thought he said, and adults.
Which would make sense, yeah.
And the person actually rewound the clip and showed me, no, he said dogs, and I'm like, no, don't be soppy tart. He said adults. No, look, yeah. He definitely says dogs.
Well, the thing was he one of these people who was sort of like, it's terrible. I haven't seen it, but I know it's terrible. Or had he actually seen any of them? Because, okay, well, in the 2018, I've seen sort of quite a few horror films in my time, the Saw series, for example, and stuff like that. And you see some of the films that are now unbanned, so that were initially at the time, and you're like, really? This is supposed to be hideous and sort of corrupt. No, it's boring. That's the ones that I've seen is basically that's what it seems to be. It's sort of like, nah, they should never have banned that in the first place. It probably wouldn't have sold as well then. It certainly wouldn't have done half as good with the VHS market because they made that's the thing. They've made it seem cool.
Well, they've certainly given the films a lot more of a reputation than a few of them deserve. Whenever the Exorcist came out on home video, I'll have to look that up. But yeah, that's basically the guy who was the chief censor at the BBFC. He was. He didn't trust grown-ups to be grown-ups in their own house. He had a very old-fashioned, sort of like Church of England of, oh, no, you can't see this. And The Exorcist, for years, was banned from home video as far as he was concerned. If you could show it in the cinema, but you couldn't purchase it on video to watch in your own home. And he would make ridiculous arguments like, well, if you watch it in the cinema, you're paying attention to the whole film and you're not having breaks. Whereas at home, you'll only sort of half watch it. You'll go off and have cups of tea and things.
And that's a bad thing because...
Well, I don't know. You might see a terribly corrupting scene out of context and, that'll make the corrupting scene even worse, I guess.
How would it be out of context when you're still watching the film? It would still be within the context of the... These people were imbeciles. How the heck did they actually get into any kind of...
Well,
never mind.
What the people who owned the rights to The Exorcist should have done was what Steven Spielberg did with Saving Private Ryan. So Saving Private Ryan, Steven Spielberg really wanted it to be a 15. He thought it was an important historical film and stuff. And lots of people should see it. And BBFC were like, no, it's really gory. It needs to be an 18. And he's like, I'll tell you what, it's so important. Why don't you come out and meet me in Hollywood, and we'll discuss it there. And, the film censor guy went off to Hollywood and probably had the time of his life and came back and said, yes, Saving Private Ryan, that's a 15 now.
No thoughts of being corrupted there.
Well, I mean, I guess it's, a realistic war film. It doesn't have much imitatable violence. I mean, you can't really, if you're a child, you can't explode off, another child's arm and, get them to go looking for it. I am making light of horrific historical events there. I appreciate that. Why is that? I don't consider that any different from a film. You're making an entertainment product. I don't care how well-meaning you think you are. You're making an entertainment product. You're making something that has to be paced to entertain people, that has to be shot in a way, has to be edited in a way to keep people engaged and entertained. It's not a fucking history documentary, So I get pissed off when people get on their high horses about Saving Private Ryan and say, oh, you shouldn't make fun of Saving Private Ryan. These things really happened. Well, it's a film. The things that really happened, they did really happen. But this isn't a depiction of those things. It's a dramatisation. It's a film. They've made a bunch of shit up.
Was it in the cinema or is it on the History Channel? Well, just saying that the History Channel now, basically, they have their own sort of drama-y type programs on there, so, which makes you go, I thought the History Channel was supposed to be about documentaries and stuff, but, whatever.
And I'm completely fine with artistic license around historical events. I think that is totally fine. I have no issues with, all the liberties that Braveheart took at all. And some of them are quite funny. Like, the fact that they made William Morris Braveheart a paedophile. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yep, you could tell how impressed Ross is by this. But yeah, in the film, he has sex with a princess. So it's implied that, he had sex with this princess. So the next king that comes along, Braveheart's the real dad. The trouble is, the princess that he's portrayed as having sex with was a real historical figure who was only 9 years old when he died. When Braveheart died.
Wow.
So technically, this makes Braveheart a paedophile.
That's not good.
No. So, I mean, she's portrayed as an adult in the movie.
Well, that's lucky. That's not, but I suppose that's where the danger lies. But when was the last time that you actually saw a film that was not based on true events? When they were actually about true events. You see, any film it says based on, which basically means that they've taken a lot of liberties of what actually happened.
Well, famously, the Coen brothers, well, maybe not so famously, but Fargo. At the beginning of that, there's a card that says, based on a true story, based on real events. And at the end of the film, it says that the suitcase of money is still buried out in the snow somewhere. People have gone looking for this suitcase of money. A woman actually died looking for this suitcase of money. And the Coen brothers have gone on record, before this woman died, by the way, saying, yeah, that based on a true story thing, that doesn't mean anything. We made up the entire film. You don't have to have any real events to put based on a true story in front of your movie. It doesn't mean anything. That's why we put it there.
That's why, really, human beings should not be allowed to actually watch anything, because human beings are actually stupid.
Well,
highly susceptible, put it this way.
Yes. I mean, I think, films, you just treat them the same way you treat vodka. I can go down the shop, I can buy some vodka because I am over 18 and I am an adult that can make the decisions as to, whether I want to get drunk on vodka or not. A 10-year-old shouldn't be able to buy vodka, and they can't. So, you just treat 18 films the same way. And I think with parental supervision, some 18 films they can watch with their children, and that's fine if they're willing to discuss the film properly with them and be sensible about it and be responsible with it. Same as a child can have a glass of wine with their meal, that's fine. But, you can't sell kid vodka. And it's a similar thing to that. And the ban on The Exorcist, it just had a idiot mentality of, people are too susceptible and too stupid to be responsible in any way, shape or form, so they can't see this movie for some reason. It was very, like I say, draconian at the time. I mean, Ninja Turtles famously had... there's a scene where one of the turtles twirls some frozen sausages like nunchucks, and that was cut out of Ninja Turtles for the longest time because that was imitatable violence.
What? No, don't get me started.
And you'll notice, and hang on a second, you haven't corrected me. What were the Ninja Turtles called in England, Ross?
I do not go... I hated it. Yes, I know.
Yeah, they were the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles because the word ninja was too violent for British audiences.
Yeah. Never mind the fact that we've been watching things like Transformers, He-Man, She-Ra, all of those, which has people stabby with swords and things like that. But,
well, He-Man never stabbed anyone. Anyone.
There's a sword involved. There's an implication of it. Whatever.
He never used his. The only thing He-Man ever used his sword for was holding it above his head and going, "I've got the power."
Well, I think in that sequence, he actually holds it in his hands. I didn't actually cut his hand off. I have absolutely no idea. But even so, he had a sword. So the implication is that there should be some stabby stuff going on. But whatever. But no.
Well, he punches the cameraman right in the face at the beginning of the show. He goes, "I'm the most powerful man in the universe," and then boosh, right in the camera's face. You're like, "Oh, this guy's awesome."
Yeah, and technically, you, the viewer, he's just punched you in the face. He's just totally and utterly disrespected you for watching his show.
Yeah, because that's just how violent he is. He solves everything with violence, with punching it in the face.
And we still watch him, so whatever.
Yeah, he hardly ever punches anything on the show. It's really annoying. He still solves everything with violence, but yeah, you don't get to see him do any sweet punches like he does at the beginning. It's really annoying.
So punching the cameraman or you, the viewer, is absolutely fine, but the word ninja, wrong. We're not having that. Really.
Well, also you can have robots. The Transformers movie was great because it was a toy commercial. And they were getting rid of the old toy line. So they were like, "Can we kill off a bunch of the old toys?" And the executives were like, "Well, yeah, of course you can, because we're not selling them anymore. So, yeah, that's a great idea." Whee! So, yeah, you get lots of violent robot deaths. One of the robots gets shot in the head. And you see smoke coming out of his mouth, and he drops down, and his face is all lit up, and then that goes completely dark. So, you see lots of robot dead bodies. There's a huge body count in the film. And best of all, the main hero of the show, you get to see him be mortally wounded and then die on a hospital bed.
I would like to say that this will be the sort of thing that really should actually be mortifying to children. But it is something that is actually not that unique, really, particularly with animation, because as we'll get on to when we actually start talking about Disney properly, about how even way back then, even from the very, very beginning in the 1930s, they were really out to traumatise children from the very beginning.
Oh, yes. Bambi famously traumatises children everywhere, and, it's not surprising. You make it very clear that, this cuddly character that you like, that you've really bonded with and stuff, that his mum has been shot dead in front of him. Sure, they don't explicitly show it, but you know what's happened. It's made very clear to you as a viewer. So, yeah, kids were famously very upset by that. And to be fair, kids were also upset about the main hero of Transformers dying on a hospital bed. They weren't as famously upset by him being brought back as a zombie in a later episode in the cartoon. Because that wasn't as widely seen as the movie. But kids were famously very upset and in tears and things in the cinema. Oh, and I forgot, one of the bad guys, he gets shot and all the colour disappears from him, and then he falls and then he breaks apart into a pile of rubble. That's one of the most awesome kills in the movie.
It's basically one of your favourite films of the time.
I wouldn't go that far because it is just a toy commercial, but there's a lot to like. You've got, for an hour-long toy commercial, you've got Eric Idle, you've got Leonard Nimoy pretending to be an insane robot, you've got Orson Welles in the last role that he ever did. There's lots of fun stuff. You got robots being violently killed.
And yet I've never seen it.
You've got an awesome cock rock soundtrack. There's lots to like.
Well, maybe one day I'll get round to watching it.
All right, okay. Right, well, I think we've explained ourselves and what we're, attempting to achieve with this podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our rather tangential conversation, but, the band was tangential. You can find the music on SoundCloud. Ross, do you want to tell people the address?
Yep, you can find some of our music available on soundcloud.com/no-preconceived-ideas.
And there you go. If you want to hear the music, what it actually sounds like, there's a good place to go. I think we'll leave that there. So I shall bid you all farewell, adieu, au revoir, whatever.
Bye.